Squid Game prides itself on keeping some of the mystery of the games from its participants as well as the audience, but eagle-eyed viewers caught on that one of the characters probably isn't who they say they are. So let's take a look at all the clues that point to the twist ending, and spoilers just for good measure. Starting with the first game, when Nam was frolicking along, if you notice when the doll is eyeing all the participants, it doesn't scan him in the same way that it does all the others. Instead of the green aimbot overlay that everyone else got, his was way more muted, as well as those in his immediate area, probably just to make sure that he doesn't catch a stray. During the game, it was also just super weird that this old man was smiling the entire time after watching around 200 random people around him getting scoped, but it makes way more sense if he knew what was going to happen. Right after that first game, when half the group is like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, who was the last person to vote? Of course, it was Mr. 001. Now, I don't think that this was according to plan necessarily, because I don't see how you could plan for a vote to be split like that every time, but with him choosing to end the games meant that when the games would get restarted, everyone would be on the same page. Dying in the game meant dying in real life. Since Nam was disturbingly excited to see all the pain the games caused, it makes sense that he would want the games to be as intense as possible. Now, some people think that it's weird that all the other main characters had their backstory shown off in the second episode, except for Nam. Especially when, although his brain tumor would have been enough for him to want to be a part of these games, he makes no mention of actually needing any money. To me, when I watched it, it just seemed like he was participating as a fun thing to do before he passed, and that actually turned out to be true, just for all the wrong reasons. Considering that he was personally interested in Gi-Hun so much so that he sought him out to convince him to join back up, it does give some credence to the idea that Nam is actually Gi-Hun's father, which explains why he helps him throughout the games, but it also has a few holes in it, like why he let him get the hardest shape in the Dalgona game, or why he wanted him in the games to begin with, but who knows. Media already has a bunch of bad fathers in it anyway. What's one more? This next one is where I actually started to question the old man's relation to the game. So when the fight breaks out in the living room, get it? Because it's the room where all the people who are still living are. Anyway, the front man could have stopped the all-out brawl at any time and even actively made it more interesting by flashing the lights, but it all ended when Nam started to say that he was scared. In my opinion, there's two ways that this could be interpreted. The first is that this was planned, or that they just have things in place if people end up realizing that people aren't safe even outside of the games, and Nam saying that he was so scared was just the code to get the PlayStation goons to step in. Or he could have been genuinely scared since he had no protection and is an old man, and him crying out set off all the alarms for the front man to stop it. Either way, the riot being stopped immediately after 001 saying something definitely made me look at him differently as the show went on. Another clue to the old man being connected to the games is that in each one he's not only very familiar, but also talks about how some of them were his favorites like Tug of War and Marbles, which sure, they're popular games, so it's not like these couldn't have been many of the characters' favorites, but then when we get to the fateful 6th episode, Gi-Hun says that boomers used to play Marbles, and since he is the oldest by seemingly a lot, that makes sense. Also, Nam keeps saying that the neighborhood looks so familiar. Probably because it actually is modeled after his neighborhood. While it worked as him acting like his dementia was really setting in, I wonder if the people who work for him actually did this in secret as a way to surprise him, and that's why he was acting like that. He was genuinely surprised that they were able to recreate his childhood neighborhood that well. Although the B-plot doesn't do much, if anything, to affect what's going on with Gi-Hun and the crew, it does show us something related to Nam's place in everything. When Jun-Ho gets to the player's archive that has profiles on everyone, when he gets to the 2020 version, it starts with player 002 instead of the old man. Obviously, it wouldn't make sense to have a profile on him if he is the ringleader and creator of everything, so it makes sense that he wouldn't be in the files. No matter what, you have to admit that Nam is a great actor in how he played the game by making certain moves depending on what game was going to be played next. The best instance of this comes right before Game 4 when he decides to just sit out while everyone else clamors to find a partner. He knows that this will be the best time to dip out the game, especially since aside from saving everyone during the tug-of-war game, he's been acting like a total liability that no one in their right mind would want as their partner. Well, I guess Gi-Hun chose him since he felt bad, but that's just protag syndrome. No regular person who is playing a life or death game would want the nice old man who occasionally forgets where he is at any given time to be on their team, or even worse, their sole partner. Nice guy points to Gi-Hun though, I guess. For a show that obviously doesn't care about showing you in detail when people meet their ends, it was very suspicious when it was his time. The camera decided to move because it wasn't that important to see the old man's soul leave his body. At this point, we've seen people get hard scoped and fall from crazy heights, and even an eyeball scene that will for sure get us demonetized. But sure, let's not show the death of one of our main characters. There's nothing out of the ordinary here, but that's not even where it ends. We end up seeing the body of Ali, who also died off screen, so it's weird that it was only the old man who we never saw again, at least while in his green uniform at least. Another clue from the marble game, since we're here, is that he was wasting time so that it would be much easier to hide his fake death. I mean, if he lost halfway through the game, it would have been kinda hard for him to avoid the fate that the other unfortunate losers of the game had faced. All that was just another way of showing that Il-Nam really did have a plan for everything. Even after his death, we see Il-Nam a few more times, and one of those times, we get a pretty clear look and sign that he might actually still be alive. So once the VIPs show up, of course the host has to be there to make sure everyone is having a good time. Well, except this guy, but who really cares about him anyway? And when the host is told that the VIPs have arrived, we get a glimpse of his hands, and they definitely look like the hands of someone who's traveled around the sun a few dozen times. Sure, you could have thought that this was some other old rich guy that was putting this show on for some of his friends or even investors, but with this happening in the very next episode where he supposedly died, just seems a little too coincidental to me. Finally, let's talk about Il-Nam's name. One translation has Il meaning either son or first, while Nam could be man or boy, which would translate to son boy, or more helpful for the whole clue theme, first man. So right from his introduction, his name was a clue to his role in the story. That coupled with his number, 001, making him the literal first man, helps even further with the theme. Il-Nam's mantra about giving everyone a fair chance and an even playing field, well, not actually true since he kept helping people and allowed Gi-Hun to keep going, is seen in his character as a whole, and even though it's not directly related to the old man, having all the games being depicted on the wall helped with the whole, if you pay attention, you'll know mentality too. Most of the time, I'm not really a fan of when shows and movies are too overt in foreshadowing how things and or characters' motivations are, and while for me things like that tend to take me out of the show, Squid Game as a whole has definitely outgrown my feelings toward it. No American remake though, please. We don't need it, and we will never need it.